ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal that the revelations unfolding across General Hospital have thrown Lucas Jones into a psychological battlefield he never anticipated entering. What began as a growing suspicion about Marco has now exploded into a terrifying mosaic of truth, one that exposes the full scope of Sidwell and Cullum's criminal operation, the brutality of their intentions, and the horrifying reality of what Britt is being forced to endure. Every fragment of information Lucas has overheard, every whispered threat, every withheld dose of medication now forms a picture so monstrous that it shatters whatever innocence he still leaves carried. And in this moment of realization, something fundamental shifts within him. Fear gives way to control. Hesitation gives way to resolve, and Lucas begins to act not as a bystander, but as a force determined to change the ending. The shift is subtle at first, an internal adjustment, a recalibration of instinct and purpose. Lucas stops seeing himself as the victim of Marco's lies, and begins viewing himself as the one person who can disrupt Sidwell's network from the inside. He replays the overheard conversations in his mind like forensic evidence. Cullum's threats? Sidwell's casual cruelty. The calculated withholding of Britt's life-sustaining medication. He understands now that Britt is not merely being coerced. She is being dismantled piece by piece, physically and psychologically under the guise of scientific progress. Her illness is being used as leverage, her brilliance exploited, her body treated like a bargaining chip. And the thought of her being trapped in that mansion alone, monitored, drug-starved, ignites something fierce and immovable inside Lucas. He begins to plan in silence. Marco interprets Lucas's calmness as forgiveness, a relief that blinds him to the truth. Lucas is gathering information, mapping escape routes, studying weaknesses in the fortress Sidwell built. The more Marco talks, the more Lucas learns. He listens with the precision of a surgeon and the caution of a man who knows one wrong move could get him or Britt killed. The terror that once paralyzed him now becomes fuel. He examines every detail of Marco's story, searching for contradictions, patterns, or names that could help Britt later. Lucas is no longer deceived. He is preparing. Yet the psychological cost is heavy. Lucas must lie to Marco, must pretend to still care, must suppress every instinct to run to the authorities. Every time Marco touches his arm or asks for reassurance, Lucas feels the weight of betrayal pressing against his ribs. He must act like a partner while secretly plotting to dismantle Marco's world. This duplicity becomes its own form of torture, but he endures it, because Britt's life hangs on the other side of the suffering. The danger escalates when Lucas discovers how far Sidwell is willing to go. The more Lucas uncovers, the clearer it becomes that Britt will not be allowed to walk away, even if she completes Faison's final project. Her medication is not simply leverage, it is a leash. Once the project is done, Sidwell will have no reason to keep her alive. Lucas is haunted by the unspoken implication Britt is living on borrowed time and that time is thinning. The urgency strikes him like ice water running through his veins. So Lucas begins to reclaim control step by step. He starts by observing the routines of Sidwell's men, identifying when the mansion grows quiet, when Pascal patrols the hallways, when Cullum slips away to take calls. He memorizes the path to the basement where Britt is kept. He tests the doors, noting which ones creak, which ones stick, which ones could betray him. Every detail becomes a lifeline threaded through his mind. The moment an opportunity appears, he intends to take it. And then comes the first act of rebellion. Lucas quietly pockets a stolen vial, one of Britt's much-needed doses. It is not enough to save her, but it is enough to keep hope alive. Enough to weaken Sidwell's hold. Enough to remind him that he is no longer powerless. The act electrifies him, but it also paints a target on his back. The moment Sidwell realizes medication is missing, suspicion will turn inward. Lucas knows he is running on limited time before everything collapses. Marco becomes the next barrier Lucas must cross. The man who once professed love now represents everything Lucas must fight against. Marco's emotional pleas, once persuasive, now sound like traps. His apologies feel hollow. His attempts to explain Sidwell's actions seem desperate and rehearsed. Lucas starts seeing through every performance, the cracks, the inconsistencies, the flashes of fear in Marco's eyes whenever Sidwell's name is mentioned. Marco is not a master manipulator. He is a coward caught in his father's web. But cowardice in this environment is deadly. And Lucas realizes Marco may very well become the person who exposes him if he senses betrayal. Yet even that risk cannot stop him. Lucas pushes forward, adopting a calmness so convincing that Marco believes they are mending their relationship. Meanwhile, Lucas uses every waking moment to strategize. He plans how to slip Britt the stolen dose, how to get her out of the estate unseen, how to gather enough evidence to expose Sidwell and Cullum without becoming their next target. He even considers how to use Brad, Jason, or Elizabeth as external allies should the situation escalate. The weight of responsibility becomes immense, and yet Lucas carries it with a steadiness that surprises even him. Everything finally ignites when Lucas makes his move. The moment he reaches Britt, the moment he sees her weakened but still defiant. Something inside him breaks and reforms stronger. He gives her the vial, whispers the truth, and promises her this nightmare will end. Britt, despite her fear, looks at Lucas with something unexpected trust. It is the first real affirmation Lucas has received since this began, and it fuels him like oxygen in a collapsing room, but the escape does not go unnoticed. Sidwell senses the disruption almost immediately, and Cullum becomes aware that the balance of power has shifted. Marco realizes Lucas has been lying to him, and heartbreak twists into panic, then into something far more dangerous. The mansion becomes a pressure cooker ready to explode. Alliance fracture. Secrets spill. Threats escalate, and Lucas finds himself standing alone against a machine designed to crush dissent. Yet for the first time he does not falter. He confronts Marco. He defies Sidwell. He protects Britt with a conviction that transforms him from a quiet medic into a force driven by justice, fear, and love. The explosion that follows is not physical, it is emotional, psychological, systemic. Lucas has broken the seal that kept Sidwell's empire intact, and now the entire structure trembles. Whether he survives this path remains uncertain. But one truth is undeniable: Lucas has stopped running from the darkness. He is walking straight into it, determined to pull Britt out before it swallows them both. As Britt begins to trust Lucas with the truth about her captivity and the danger surrounding Sidwell's project, she finally reveals a secret she has kept hidden for far too long. Jason has been quietly working on a plan to his body to reverse engineer her medication. He believes that understanding the formula is the only way to free Britt from Sidwell's control and protect her from the life-threatening consequences of her untreated Huntington's disease. The moment Britt mentions Jason's plan, Lucas steps in, recognizing the magnitude of what she is saying. For the first time, Britt sees not a frightened man torn between loyalty and survival, but someone ready to fight alongside her. Their conversation becomes a turning point, an exchange of information, fear, strategy, and mutual vulnerability. Britt confides in Lucas about the limits Sidwell has forced on her, the doses withheld, the pressure of completing Faison's final blueprint, and the growing fear that she may not live long enough to escape his reach. Lucas, shaken yet determined, shares what he has learned from overhearing Marco, Cullum, and Sidwell. Together they assemble the fragments of truth into a full picture of the operation trapping Britt in that mansion. And then, something unexpected happens. Lucas takes control. He is no longer the uncertain man trying to understand what Marco is hiding. He becomes the strategist, assessing risks, calculating escape routes, and identifying weak links in Sidwell's chain of command. Britt, exhausted and terrified, allows herself to lean on him. The tension that once defined their relationship, shaped by Brad, by jealousy, by misunderstandings, fades. What replaces it is a cautious but genuine connection, and the beginning of a friendship neither of them ever imagined possible. But the most dramatic shift in the storyline emerges when Brad re-enters the picture. Brad, Britt's closest friend and Lucas's former partner, possesses the one skill neither Britt nor Lucas fully commands: the scientific expertise to decode and reassemble the contrast distribution mechanism of her medication. When Britt and Lucas reveal the stolen vial and the fragments of research Britt has managed to save, Brad sees immediately what must be done. He knows the formula. He understands the structure. He sees a path to freeing Britt not just from Sidwell's control, but from the dependency that has been weaponized against her. And in helping Britt, Brad indirectly helps Lucas too, pulling him back into a world where he is needed, trusted, and emotionally awake for the first time in months. Lucas watches Brad work, the confidence in his voice, the steadiness of his hands, the genuine concern etched across his expression every time Britt winces from pain or fear. Those qualities are familiar, painfully so. They remind Lucas of the man he once loved, the man he believed he had lost forever. As the crisis deepens, Brad becomes the anchor Lucas didn't realize he still relied on. Their conversations, once heavy with guilt and unresolved grievances, begin to soften. Lucas sees a version of Brad that he had locked away with old heartbreak: the insightful scientist, the fiercely loyal friend, the flawed but deeply loving partner. Helping Britt becomes the bridge that reconnects them. Brad proves himself not through apologies or promises, but through action. Through saving Britt. Through protecting Lucas. Through standing against Sidwell's brutality with a courage Lucas had forgotten he possessed. And Lucas begins to forgive, not because he forgets the past, but because he finally understands that pain can coexist with hope. When Brad looks at him, there is no expectation, no pressure. Only the quiet acknowledgement of something that was once powerful and might still be alive. Port Charles begins to feel the shift too. The storyline, once centered on danger and conspiracy, tilts toward emotional resurrection. Lucas is rediscovering the part of himself that believed in love, trust, and second chances. And the possibility emerges gently at first, then with startling clarity that Lucas might find his way back to Brad. Not out of nostalgia, not out of desperation, but because standing together in the darkest moment has reminded them both of the connection that never fully died. If Britt survives, if Sidwell falls, if Lucas walks away from Windermere alive, there is a future waiting to be rewritten. A future where Lucas stops mourning the past and starts reclaiming it. Spoon Island had always carried an atmosphere of unease, but after everything Lucas uncovered, the withheld medication, in the cryptic threats, the plans to dispose of Britt if she failed its gothic silence became something far more sinister. The mansion, once an intimidating symbol of the Cassadine legacy, now felt like a pressure chamber ready to detonate. And it was Lucas who pushed it to the breaking point. The moment he committed to saving Britt, he understood that he would have to sabotage the island itself, its operations, its security, its carefully constructed power structure. He had no illusions left. Britt could not walk away unless Spoon Island fell apart from the inside. Lucas began quietly dismantling everything Sidwell relied on. He corrupted the surveillance system with equipment stolen from Marco's room, rerouted power grids so alarms would misfire, and wiped sections of the digital archives that contained Britt's research. What he could not delete, he damaged beyond repair. Even the route to the basement lab, the heart of Sidwell's control, became compromised as Lucas secretly rerouted ventilation, allowing humidity and cold to ruin samples and destabilize equipment. The island was crumbling one system at a time, and no one suspected him. Not yet. But Marco sensed something shifting. He could feel Lucas slipping out of his reach emotionally and physically. Lucas no longer flinched when Marco touched him. His responses were clipped, his eyes distant, his demeanor unnervingly calm. Marco knew Lucas was lying, he just didn't know how deeply or how dangerously under arrest. And the more Sidwell berated Marco for losing control of the weakest link, the more Marco's desperation morphed into a volatile combination of fear and rage. He began drinking again, pacing the halls, checking corners, questioning guards. Spoon Island felt haunted not by ghosts but by the unraveling of secrets he no longer had the strength to contain. When the lights flickered across the West Wing for the third night in a row, Sidwell exploded, demanding answers Marco couldn't give. Colum blamed him. Pascal mocked him. And Britt, weak, shaking but fearless, told him that Lucas would never forgive him once the truth reached the surface. Those words struck Marco deeper than any threat from Sidwell ever had. Because Britt was right. Lucas was already slipping through his fingers. And Marco for the first time felt truly alone inside the fortress he pretended to control. That isolation pushed him over the edge. Marco started digging through Lucas's belongings, checking messages, monitoring his movements. When he found evidence of tampered systems, reprogrammed consoles, wiped files, and corrupted cameras, the truth struck like a blade. Lucas had betrayed him. Lucas was destroying the island piece by piece. Lucas had chosen Britt over him. And the betrayal shattered the last thread holding Marco's sanity in place. He became a storm, violent and unpredictable, roaming the mansion with frantic energy, determined to reclaim control before Sidwell realized how deep Lucas's interference ran. And Lucas felt the shift immediately. The air in the hallways changed. The silence grew sharper. Every footstep echoed with tension. He moved through the corridors with controlled urgency, carrying the final vial of Britt's medication hidden in his sleeve. The escape had to happen now, before Marco confronted him, before Sidwell pieced everything together. Before Spoon Island erupted into chaos that could swallow them all. But fate refused to grant him a clean exit. Marco found him at the foot of the stairs, shadows cutting across his face, fury burning in his eyes. The betrayal, the fear, the humiliation, everything poured out of him in one explosive moment. He accused Lucas of ruining everything, of siding with Britt, of making him look weak in front of his father. And Lucas, exhausted and resolved, stopped lying. He told Marco the truth with a coldness that cut deeper than any weapon. He was destroying Spoon Island because Britt deserved to live, and Marco chose to help kill her. It was the spark that ignited the war between them. Marco lunged first, fueled by heartbreak and rage. Lucas dodged, adrenaline taking over, as he fought back not with strength but with strategy. Every second mattered. If Marco stopped him here, Britt would die. Lucas's movements were sharp, deliberate, driven by terror and conviction. He managed to shove Marco back, slipping past him long enough to trigger the final override in the basement lab, a sequence he had prepared hours earlier. Systems crashed. Generators overloaded. Sidwell's research servers began melting under the sabotage. Spoon Island was collapsing. Alarms blared across the mansion. Colum shouted orders. Pascal sprinted through the corridors. Sidwell stormed from room to room, demanding control of a situation that was slipping away faster than he could grasp it. And Marco, realizing the full extent of Lucas's destruction, snapped into rebellion. Not against Lucas, against Sidwell. Against the father who had ruined his life, weaponized his trauma, and treated him as disposable. Lucas's rebellion had given Marco something he never had before: the courage to defy Sidwell openly. The house became a battlefield. Lucas fought to reach Britt. Marco fought to stop Sidwell. Guards fought to contain the chaos. Doors slammed, circuits exploded, and the mansion flickered between darkness and violent bursts of red emergency light. Britt, trembling but alive, clung to Lucas as he led her toward the exit. And for the first time she saw in him not a frightened medic, not a man in over his head, but a hero forged by desperation and moral clarity. Spoon Island was burning. Marco was rebelling. Sidwell was losing everything. And Lucas' quiet, gentle, underestimated Lucas had become the force that shattered an empire. The explosion wasn't just physical. It was emotional, relational, psychological. And when the dust settles, Port Charles will never be the same.